The early 1990s. Location: the frozen lands of Siberia. Operating at the fringes of science, two Russian scientists, Dr. Kozyrev and Dr. Trofimov, sequestered themselves in their laboratory to go beyond human perception. What they constructed appeared to be nothing more than a strange metal structure from the outside. Their goal was simple: to test the limits of the human mind. However, the experiment that began in this desolate laboratory soon spiraled out of control. Not only the test subjects, but the entire local population fell into the grip of an unexplainable horror. Energy orbs appearing in the sky, a sense of pure fear felt near the machines, and northern lights burning up the atmosphere, many times brighter than normal. All of this pointed to a single truth. Could the Russian genius, Nikolai Kozyrev, have been right? Because if he was right, then time as you know it does not actually exist. Welcome to Secret History. Nikolai Alexandrovich Kozyrev, a name you have likely never heard. Yet, in the dusty pages of history, he was a genius ignored and mocked by mainstream science, both in his time and even today. In the dark and destitute 1930s of the Soviet Union, young Nikolai was working at the Pulkovo Astronomical Observatory. His professors and peers recognized the potential of this young prodigy, realizing his genius was a light that could carry the Soviets out of those dark times back into enlightenment. But fate had other plans. The leader of the shallow-minded communist regime of the era, Joseph Stalin, saw the light of science and the hope it gave to people as a threat to his own regime. He ordered the execution of all scientists at the observatory. Out of dozens of people, only Nikolai Kozyrev's life was spared, but not in the rosy way you might think. Due to his anti-communist ideas, Nikolai was sentenced to 20 years of solitary confinement in the infamous Gulag prison. Imagine this: you are the brightest mind of the era, imprisoned in a single-person isolation cell where you can barely see the sunlight. You would expect this event to break all your motivation and faith in humanity and life, wouldn't you? However, the exact opposite happened. In this dark pit, Kozyrev dedicated himself to science. He recalled and developed everything he had learned up to that day, thousands of times over in the depths of his mind. Since he had been in a cell for years, independent of scientific developments in the outside world and the rigid dogmas of mainstream science, he freely developed his own theoretical physics laws. Meanwhile, his friends on the outside were using all their power to lobby and pressure the Stalin regime for Nikolai's release. And finally, these efforts bore fruit. After 10 years of captivity, he was released. Naturally, the entire Soviet scientific community was overjoyed to have this genius back among them. But the man who went in 10 years ago and the man who regained his freedom were no longer the same person. Those who read the claims of Kozyrev, who had produced science freely for years without the direction of mainstream science, were shocked. Based on discussions by Albert Einstein and Hermann Minkowski, that gravity is not a natural force, but a distortion of space-time continuity in the fourth dimension, and that every mass in the universe creates certain bends and differences on this continuity. Kozyrev uttered these extraordinary words: "Using a special type of mirror, all forces in nature can be bent. This includes time. Time travel is possible with this mirror." Now, You are thinking, how is that possible, right? Allow me to explain a bit. According to Kozyrev, time and light were actually not that different from each other. Just as light was a type of energy origin, time was also an energy. And just as we increased our perception by making light spectra invisible to our eyes, visible with our technology, the same was true for time. Humans perceive time as something that flows away and disappears. The future does not exist. The past is over. Only the now exists. However, according to Kozyrev, time is actually a single vast piece, and concepts like past and future do not exist. They all exist within the same moment, right now. To help you understand this better, let me give you this example. Think of time as a flowing river. You are on a boat on it, moving with the flow of time. According to Kozyrev, even if you are moving forward on the river, when you look back, the place you just passed and the river are still standing there. Kozyrev continues, if we apply a force to the boat going on this river of time, we can slow our boat down, speed it up, or even make it move against the current, because ultimately the river of time stands there fixed from beginning to end. It is only our boat that moves upon it. Kozyrev stated that while developing this theory, he utilized the torsion fields in the universe that he himself proposed. I want to summarize this briefly. According to Kozyrev, the reason large masses mentioned in Einstein's theory of general relativity bend the structure of space, creating changes in time and gravity, was not subatomic particle energy, but time energy. Kozyrev said that the voids in space, which was seen as a crazy claim for those times, were actually not empty, but filled with an invisible force called ether. The ether phenomenon is actually a topic people have discussed since ancient times, a force that surrounds us all. But post-19th century science found this idea absurd and removed it from the market, because according to the science of those times, which is still valid for many things, something that science cannot detect is considered non-existent for them. How absurd and egoistic an approach, isn't it? According to Kozyrev, just as a bird uses air to fly, or a fish uses water as a medium to swim, structures and objects in the universe must also move within a medium with its help. And he called this ether. Of course, for years everyone looked at the man as if he were crazy, until the day we understood that dark matter and dark energy must exist. Yes, today we now know that what we call the vacuum of space is actually not a vacuum. In fact, there is no such concept as empty in the universe. We understood that forces called dark matter and dark energy, which interact with everything, exist. We cannot detect this with our current technology, but by analyzing the movements of galaxies, we now know that a colossal force shapes the universe. Kozyrev's only crime was saying this decades before its official discovery, and choosing the word ether found in ancient texts, instead of words like dark energy, quantum foam, etc. Is it not a tragically stupid event that mainstream science looked at the man as a madman? Just as a whale swimming in water creates torsions on the surface with its movements. According to Kozyrev, objects like planets and stars moving in the universe also created such torsions in the structure of the universe. And if these torsions are detected or directed correctly, starting with the premise that time energy is at the foundation of everything, seeing the past or the future, and perhaps moving there as technology develops, could even be possible. This is exactly the power Kozyrev's mirror provided. Just as a classic mirror directs light by bending or refracting it, The special mirror structure he designed did this for time. Of course, science, blinded by the ego and molds I always criticize, laughed at Kozyrev's claims with, so to speak, their backsides, and they didn't even deem it worthy to test his design. Throughout the ages, all geniuses have been subjected to the pressure of these shallow egoists. Leonardo da Vinci, Madame Curie, even the father of modern physics, Isaac Newton, were mocked and belittled for their fringe ideas in their time. But thanks to these people, science has come to where it is today. Unfortunately, such egoistic creatures continue to control mainstream science and hinder humanity's development with open-mindedness. Anyway, let's continue with our topic. Unable to get financial support from the scientific community, Kozyrev began to develop his machine with his own limited means and conducted experiments with various metals. As a result, he determined that the metal that refracts time energy best was aluminum shaped into a thin concave, that is, an inwardly curved mirror. Today, concave mirrors and structures are a technology used both in focusing light and focusing radio waves in radio telescopes. The working logic is always the same: to concentrate visible or invisible energy waves into a specific area. Even ancient Greeks used this in their time to burn things using the sun's light. Sometimes they even turned it into a weapon against wooden ships. Starting with this method, Kozyrev developed the idea of focusing the energy of time to a single point. In this way, the person inside the machine would have the chance to experience the past and the future simultaneously. Kozyrev designs the machine, starting from the shapes of spirals with Fibonacci ratios that we can also see in nature. Kozyrev creates a vertical aluminum concave mirror spiral. According to Kozyrev's theory, time energy would form a vortex toward the center of this spiral. And as I said a moment ago, it would allow the subject to see various moments of time simultaneously. Everything is now ready for the great experiment, and perhaps we are at the dawn of one of the greatest discoveries in human history. What happens? In February of 1983, Kozyrev suddenly falls ill and passes away within just a few days. According to the autopsy report, the cause of death is written as unknown, and the world loses another of its geniuses in a suspicious manner. But with Kozyrev's death, the event does not end. On the contrary, it begins anew. Because although his colleagues laughed at Kozyrev back then, there were two groups that took his theories seriously: the KGB and the CIA. During the Cold War years, a new war front opened between America and the Soviet Union: psychic warfare. Both institutions spent millions of dollars training individuals with sensitive senses across the country to spy on the enemy using remote viewing methods. These are no longer secrets or even conspiracy theories. Documents for all of them exist. The Soviets also devoted serious effort and time to these subjects. In fact, according to leaked CIA reports, their psychic agents were getting much more successful results. Now, our story brings us back to the experiments of Dr. Trofimov and Dr. Kazanachev that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, because they too, with the direct support of the KGB and using the notes, books, and even designs of the late scientist Nikolai Kozyrev that were confiscated by the state, had restarted these experiments. These events, which would go down in history as the Dickson town experiments, continue to create both excitement and fear in many people even today. Because some things people saw as a result of the experiments were truly worrying. The KGB and our doctors chose this desolate town in the northernmost part of the Asian continent for two reasons. First, there were few people in the region to witness these highly classified experiments. The second importance of the region was stated by Dr. Trofimov himself as follows. The permafrost layer of the region contains thousands of years of hidden time energy. As the valuable Dr. Kozyrev said, just as a clay pot holds the magnetic records of the world within it, the moment it is fired as matter passes from liquid to solid. Freezing water also traps temporal energy within its structure, and when melting occurs, this energy is released and becomes easier to detect. These experiments conducted in Dickson were such a fringe science topic that no one had even the slightest idea of what would happen. And as many people said later, if they knew what would happen, they would never have done it. The experiments and results I am about to tell you are based entirely on official documents, books written by the doctors themselves, and recorded subject logs. In other words, they are all official state documents. Day 1 of the experiment. Our doctors gave this day an interesting name, the Day of Terror. The three of us came to the psychological research room to work. As soon as we entered the room, you could feel the emotional tension in the environment. We found a picture with 3 dots inside a circle. One of us suggested putting this inside the Kozyrev mirrors, but we couldn't even guess it would be this hard. We couldn't even stand near the mirrors. The fear we experienced was indescribable. It was as if that feeling of terror was not a feeling inside us, but an entity standing in front of us. I even felt I could touch it if I reached out. None of us had ever experienced such an overwhelming feeling before. I am very afraid to approach the mirrors. One of my colleagues decided to put the peace symbol into the mirrors. I noticed he was shaking like a child the moment he reached out his hand. I also feel my chest tightening with fear. It's like jumping into ice-cold water. The feeling of fear grew so much inside me that I had to run out of the room. When I entered the room again, I collapsed on the floor as if I had received a blow to the head. We think the cause of the psychological pressure is the Kozyrev mirrors, because the closer we get to them, the more the feeling of fear and terror increases. I feel unbalanced and drunk. My hands shake and I get dizzy as I get closer. I feel a bit better when I move away from the mirrors. Time, 11 o'clock. In my second attempt, I couldn't get very close to the mirrors either. The feeling of fear is unbelievable. Time, 11:50. After pulling myself together, I try to put the paper with the peace symbol in the center. I can't stop my hands from shaking. I saw black clouds inside the field. It was as if all the mirrors were covered with these clouds. Time, 1 o'clock. It's like a strange substance has filled the whole room. The fear coming from the Kozyrev spiral is so strong that we had to put a cross between us and the mirrors. This gave us a little feeling of relief, but at 2 o'clock, the feeling of fear and terror became so intense that we had to leave the room. My colleague went back to the room to get his cigarettes. At that exact moment, a flash of purple light suddenly came from the mirrors. It looked like the roots of a tree. We ran away from there. It was as if a dark cloud was following right behind me. I couldn't sleep at all at night. In the morning, I woke up with a headache. According to the notes of Dr. Kozyrev and Dr. Trofimov, while these events were happening, the security guard of the facility saw light balls moving in the air. The doctor continues his writing as follows. When the subjects tried to approach the mirror with Nikolai Kozyrev's peace symbol in their hands, we detected that a force field blocked them. Subsequently, a glow resembling a plasma explosion covered the facility. At this exact moment, the security guard saw light balls moving over the facility. This flying object event repeated itself 7 more times over the following 2 months. Our doctor, who took a break from the experiments so that the subjects could recover and that feeling of fear in the atmosphere would disappear, started the next phase of the experiments on December 25th. This time, the subjects would enter the chamber in the center of the Kozyrev mirrors and begin their mental exercises. The subject takes their place. The employees rotate the chamber 1.5 turns clockwise, and the interesting events experienced by each subject begin. Dr. Trofimov described what happened as follows. All subjects entering the Kozyrev mirrors said that interesting symbols appeared before their eyes, symbols glowing like neon lamps. We all saw them and looked at them with admiration. They were seriously very distinct halos. In their books, our doctors shared these symbols in detail. This phase of the experiment continued for 6 months, and in May of 1991, the report containing the symbols seen psychically was prepared. These drawings you see on the screen are symbols seen by separate subjects as a result of experiences they had at different times. Remember, none of them know what the other saw. They were not allowed to communicate with each other during the experiment during the day. Despite this, they all saw the same symbols. Let's examine the symbols a bit. You must have immediately recognized this eye symbol seen by all subjects, the famous all-seeing eye symbol. This symbol, used throughout history by both secret societies and ancient Egyptians, symbolizes our third eye. That is, our spiritual eye inside our brain. The second symbol that catches our attention is the 3 dots inside a circle symbol. This symbol is the peace symbol used by the mystic adventurer Nikolai Kozyrev, who dedicated his life to finding the lands of Agartha and Shambhala. Interestingly, in the records, the subjects we just listened to approach the mirrors with this symbol first to overcome the fear in the environment. However, the symbol created the exact opposite effect, increasing the fear and ultimately causing dark clouds to emerge from the spiral structure, according to what was told. Rorik said he chose this symbol as the Holy Trinity symbol in Christianity when he first went on his Asian trips. But later, throughout the years, he searched for Agartha. He explained that he saw the symbol was used in ancient Asian cultures thousands of years before Christianity. Who knows? Maybe the drawing he knew as a peace symbol actually has a much different meaning. Let's advance this symbol story a bit more before events get even crazier, because there are some important points. We go to the year 1997. The 1,200 symbols collected over the passing approximately 7 years are listed according to their frequency of repetition and shared with the Russian Academy of Linguistics. As a result of the research conducted, it turns out that 80% of the symbols were symbols also used by ancient civilizations. And among these civilizations, one stands out. Dr. Trofimov wrote, "At first, we thought the symbols were a message sent to us. Later, we understood that most of the symbols we saw were symbols belonging to the Sumerian civilization. Dozens of symbols found on clay tablets are exactly the same as what our subjects saw. I believe we have somehow entered a large metaphysical information network. The part we came across was the one related to the ancient Sumerian civilization. As you know, we think our written history and writing itself began with the Sumerians. Of course, when Sumerians are involved, things start to change a bit, because this civilization always claimed that their gods gave them this information. and caused the birth of the ancient alien concept today. As a matter of fact, the Kozyrev Mirror experiments may have led us to a similar result, because in the next phase of the experiment, participants said they personally saw these beings. We are back in the town of Dickson. The year is 1991. The only thing visible during the experiments wasn't bright ancient symbols. In fact, in the first weeks of the project, experiments were frequently stopped due to sudden dizziness, feelings of fear, and migraine pains experienced by people. Over time, subjects gained resistance to these side effects and started to stay inside the spiral longer. And with their narration, the following events began to happen. Being inside the Kozyrev field, at first I felt nothing, but a few minutes later, I started to see a human figure. Everything was completely white. Within 30 seconds, everything was over. I felt like I was dead in the Kozyrev field. The moment I closed my eyes, I saw a flying object above. Then everything went dark, but then it lit up again. I was in a room I had never been in before. Someone was standing in the middle of the room, but I couldn't see their face. They started speaking slowly and said, "Your planet is facing a great danger. It is suffering. A disaster may happen soon." I asked him, "When?" But he didn't answer me. I have been in the Kozyrev field for 5 minutes. I see my 5-year-old self. I don't remember the clothes, but my shoes are in my mind like yesterday. Just as I was about to touch myself, I was seized by an ice-cold feeling and woke up. When I entered the Kozyrev field, it was as if waves were hitting my head and ears. At one point, I couldn't feel my feet. Immediately after, a tall man in white clothes slowly turned to me. Then suddenly, some images started to appear before my eyes. At that moment, it was as if I heard someone breathing in my room. But then I was relieved when I realized I was alone. I saw a flying object in the Kozyrev field. It was descending slowly. It had a black structure but white windows. Then it suddenly rose and left. Not just with what you heard. Perhaps some subjects expressed that when they entered the field, they found themselves watching a war through the eyes of ancient Roman generals, or watching the events through the eyes of the people there, while the city of Pompeii was being destroyed by a volcanic eruption. According to statistics published by the doctors, one of the most frequent phenomena seen by subjects participating in tests was UFOs, seen by 75.4% of participants, and the phenomenon of the presence of an observer, seen by 68%. Subjects describe this observer entity as a faceless humanoid silhouette in a white dress. Another common feature told about this entity was that it gave the feeling of having superior power. Subjects said they felt this entity could read their every move, every thought, and even control them if it wanted to. Another result revealed by the experiment was the phenomenon of participants seeing events further back in time, depending on their duration of stay in the room. Dr. Trofimov said, when subjects voluntarily stayed in the field longer, for example, for a few hours, they found themselves observing events specifically from an era corresponding to the Roman period, and most of the time, by seeing through the eyes of real people who personally lived those events. Besides these metaphysical features of the machine, the KGB specifically wanted to test if this device could be used for remote communication. For this, a duplicate of the machine was built in facilities in the town of Novosibirsk, located approximately 2,000 kilometers away from the town of Dickson, where the main experiment was conducted. and remote communication experiments began. The results are shocking. Subjects in Dickson are asked to visualize symbols determined beforehand in their minds and transmit this image to the other receiver 2,000 kilometers away. At first, the success rate of the experiment is around 10%, but whenever electromagnetic movements linked to solar storms in the atmosphere increase, that is when success rates suddenly rise up to 50%. It's as if, without even realizing it, our consciousness and perception are connected to the Earth's magnetic balances, aren't they? Exactly as Nikolai Kozyrev, the creator of the theory, claimed years ago. Nikolai claimed that such solar movements created large torsion fields, and these fields had effects on both the human body and the natural cycles of the world itself. When bilateral communication was successful, it was decided to conduct the experiment on a larger scale. This time, the person at the main base would imagine sending the symbols they saw directly to the world's magnetosphere. And during this time, 5,000 people participating in the experiment in 12 different countries of the world were told to feel this symbol. What was the result? Success rates reaching 95% were achieved when magnetosphere movements were at their peak. Of course, the event also shocks the CIA, which had been secretly watching the experiment for years. And in their reports written about the event, they specifically stated that little girls from families with a shamanic belief background were very prone to such extrasensory perceptions. I want to share some of the example with you. During the experiment, the person at the main center is asked to visualize this shape at number 63 in their mind and send it to the magnetosphere. Children participating in the experiment in other places are told to feel and draw this reflection they see, and this result emerges. For symbol number 32, this result is obtained. Although all these results are interesting, extremely extraordinary events began to occur in the region during the periods the experiments were conducted. Since the town of Dickson is located very close to the North Pole, as I said before, it is a place where the aurora phenomenon, known as northern lights, is frequently seen, meaning a natural event the locals are very familiar with. However, on December 27th, an event occurred that the public was not familiar with at all. At 10 past 12, hundreds of people living in the town said that arrow-like formations with thousands of various colors descended from the atmosphere as if to the ground and concentrated on the facility where the experiments were conducted. At this exact moment, our doctors were conducting mirror experiments with Kozyrev, a local artist from Dickson, and they asked him to quickly sketch the images he saw on the papers in his hand. When the event mentioned by the villagers occurred, all electronic equipment in the facility started to malfunction. However, the doctors did not stop the experiment, and the experiment was completed without problems. After this interesting atmospheric event, facility employees noticed that all metal objects in the building were magnetized, and upon this, our doctors contacted the geophysical observation facility in the region and asked if they knew the cause of what happened. The observation center said that the nano-Tesla level, referring to electromagnetism in the atmosphere, skyrocketed from the normal number of 60,000 units to 990,000 units at those hours. And they explained that this could only happen with a massive solar storm. However, none of them could explain the event of these aurora lines almost descending to the ground and concentrating around the building. As the villagers said, while all these events were happening, Kozyrev, who was drawing in the Kozyrev field, had an interesting experience. The artist made 3 sketches during his stay in the field. The first of these is this visual where he depicted 3 large pyramids emitting light around them. The second is this round flying object which he said he saw descending from space to Earth. And the last one is this object of 2 black flying objects he said he saw over the world again. Now, these may seem like simple and meaningless drawings to you, but a few days after these drawings, these UFOs drawn by the artist started to be seen by everyone over the facility in the town. Eyewitnesses described the scene as follows. I saw an object resembling a bright yellow triangle. It slowly transformed its shape from a triangle to an oval form. The amount of light it emitted changed during this time. I saw a bright yellow object in the shape of a semicircle. Its color was changing slowly. Its brightness was also increasing and decreasing like a pulse. Then, it changed its shape from a semicircle to a triangular state. I saw a glowing object in the sky turning its shape from a semicircle to a triangle. It was as if radiation was emitting from the lower parts of the object. I saw a UFO coming from the north. It was getting bigger and bigger. Then it turned its direction to the northwest. It was as if a light was spreading from around the object and leaving a trail of light behind it. It moved away from me and disappeared from sight. I watched its movements for exactly 4 minutes. I saw a UFO flying over the town of Dickson. It was like an extremely bright ball, and it was leaving a long light trail behind it. I watched it for about a minute. Then it stopped where it was. Smoke covered around it, and it disappeared from sight. With this last event, no more UFO cases occurred during the time until the end of the experiment. But this time, some interesting changes began to occur in the subjects. After the experiments ended, uncontrolled, increased extrasensory perception began to be detected in some subjects. According to reports given by the participants themselves, some gained telepathic abilities unintentionally, while the chronic ailments others had suffered from for years disappeared. One of the subjects said they constantly wanted to jump off the balcony, caught in that feeling of flying in the Kozyrev field, because they believed they would stay in the air even if they jumped. It was observed that these side effects slowly disappeared months after the experiments ended. An extraordinary experiment and story, isn't it? Frankly, I didn't think it would go this deep while researching either. So, why didn't these experiments continue? Why do none of us even know about these? Let's examine this topic a bit. First of all, the biggest reason you don't see these experiments in scientific journals or articles is that mainstream science does not see this as a branch of science. As I said throughout the video, according to many egomaniacal science boards, topics falling into the metaphysical field are not even taken seriously. Although mainstream science did not take this topic seriously, institutions led personally by the KGB and CIA took it extremely seriously, and they conducted their experiments by allocating large budgets to the subject. We know the Soviet leg of the business thanks to these documents scattering around, in the literal sense, after the dissolution of the Union. We know the CIA leg thanks to some documents they published due to the American Freedom of Information Act. But despite this law, the CIA did not share any documents regarding the Kozyrev Mirror experiments they conducted on their own scale and continued to classify them as top secret. The best data we know about this subject relates to the Stargate project. What about Dr. Kozyrev and Dr. Alexander Trofimov, who personally conducted the experiment? Dr. Kozyrev continued his research for a while after the experiments ended, but he explained that, over time, he started experiencing anxiety problems stemming from fear and insomnia. Upon this, he retired from his field and served as a consultant to the United Nations on international law. Moreover, the topic he addressed was on the prevention of countries conducting psychic experiments and making psychic weapons. In his last statement to the press about the subject, Kozyrev said, "We still haven't fully understood the secret of the mirrors. Working with them involves great risks. They don't just remain a door opening to the unknown. They can also be a door opening to other people's minds, and this creates a great danger for people unaware of this." Kozyrev closes the subject with these words, "The experiments we conducted showed us not only that we are not alone in the physical universe, but also that there is someone in the metaphysical universe. And if we continue these experiments with our current shallow metaphysical view, we make both ourselves and our planet open to the entities facing us. And unfortunately, we have no information about whether they are good or bad. The secrets of the great cosmic consciousness are perhaps the most disturbing concept I have encountered." His colleague Alexander Trofimov, with whom he conducted the experiment, continued to publish articles and give speeches at conferences about his experiments and the subject in the following years. In fact, he is currently conducting studies that enable the prediction of seismic movements on Earth using the late Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev's torsion theories. While normally geophysics science makes these predictions with a success rate of 5 to 10%, the group established by Trofimov currently makes seismic movement predictions with a success of up to 60%. It is extremely normal for there to be skeptics among you questioning the accuracy of this duo. But don't forget this. We are not talking about American populist conspirators thinking, "How can I get rich from this?" Here, the experiment is conducted and reported personally by the Soviet regime and subsequently the Russian state under KGB supervision. Lying to these administrations about your experiment does not produce very good results for you. As a matter of fact, the KGB also conducted different studies on psychics who showed success in tests after this event. Documents for these also exist. In fact, Dr. Kozyreb's request to end these experiments at the United Nations was due to the psychic experiments conducted by the KGB, resulting in the death of many subjects. Don't forget, not only the KGB, but the CIA also closely followed this experiment and its results and started their own experiments. For those who think the business is scientifically impossible, and that mainstream science always knows best about everything, let me give you news of a development. On March 15, 2023, some open-minded scientists working at New York University succeeded in reflecting temporal data with the tools they developed. This fringe theory, known as time reflection, was thus proven in March. Meaning, Nikolai Kozyrev was right once again. Time is not a hypothetical concept flowing linearly as we think. It is an energy capable of carrying data. I am aware this is an extremely confusing topic, but the potential is incredible. Imagine you control the energy of time, diseases, old age, disasters. We can prevent all of these and redesign our perspective on reality from the start. In a Marvel movie, Doctor Strange, a tool using this energy was shared with us beautifully. The time stone effect was shown like this. Actually simple, but they made a beautiful explanation. You can manipulate the time energy on an eaten apple and bring it back to its state before it was eaten. And this change only covers the apple. Meaning, even if you have eaten that apple, it can return to its old state, an infinite food renewal cycle. So, Why is a technology with such massive potential not used everywhere? Those asking, why is there no investment in this? I guess are not aware they are in a slavery system. Think about it. Why would guys trying to keep you in their hands with the 3 pennies they give you every month, constantly individualized, invest in a technology that will prove you are part of a whole at a universal level, strengthen your extrasensory feelings, and make you spiritually free? The moment you realize these truths, you start to exit that slavery system and destroy it. And this brings the end of those who establish that system. That is why neither this technology nor similar ones will generally be accessible as long as this system exists. But individually, you can access this yourself. I am leaving the link to the documents related to the topic in the description section. Those researching the topic can learn how to build these mirrors in their homes with materials they can easily procure personally because they are not very extraordinary devices. I personally will build this device for myself at the first available time. When it's finished, I will share my experiences with you. But my advice, unless you all experience this, if you have the opportunity, you cannot evolve by imitating what others do or listening to their adventures. You need to set out on the path personally. It seems appropriate to close the topic with this beautiful quote. Maybe not every seeker finds, but those who find are the seekers. With the wish that we never give up seeking and questioning. Thank you all for watching the video. If you like such topics, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and leave a comment. Take care of yourselves until we see each other next week.